Welcome to our channel, a space where we transform words into knowledge. Here, we are dedicated to sharing audiobooks on personal and financial growth, powerful tools to achieve your goals and unlock your full potential. If you are looking for inspiration, practical strategies, and deep reflections to improve your life, this is your place. Don't forget to subscribe and activate the notification bell so you don't miss any more content. Today we explore Your Erroneous Zones by Wayne Dyer, a book that changed the lives of millions of people by revealing how to identify and eliminate thought patterns that limit us. Published in 1976, this classic remains an essential guide for those seeking a freer, fuller, and more authentic life. What can you expect from this journey? Practical ideas to free yourself from fear, guilt, and the need for approval. So, sit back and join me as we explore the most transformative teachings of this book together. Ready to take the first step? Chapter 1. Taking Charge of Yourself. The essence of greatness lies in the ability to choose self-actualization in circumstances where others choose conformity. Wayne Dyer begins this chapter by inviting us to reflect on the control we have over our own lives. Imagine death as a constant companion reminding you of the transience of life. Will you live up to what others expect of you, or will you take charge of your existence? Dyer uses a powerful example, Tolstoy's Ivan Ilyich, who on his deathbed wonders if his entire life has been a mistake, having lived up to others' standards. This story emphasizes the importance of living authentically. Practical reflection. Ask yourself, am I living according to what I really want, or am I simply following the script others have laid out for me? Make a list of the things that make you happy and commit to prioritizing them, even if they may seem small or insignificant to others. Intelligence and happiness. Dyer redefines the concept of intelligence. It's not about academic degrees or technical skills, but about living a full and happy life. True intelligence lies in knowing how to choose emotions and reactions that benefit you. Here's a practical example. If you're faced with an unpleasant situation, such as poor service at a restaurant, instead of getting upset, think of practical solutions. Can you change the situation or just accept it and move on? Valuing your peace of mind over frustration is an act of emotional intelligence. Emotional choice. Feelings are reactions you choose to have. According to Dyer, your emotions are not uncontrollable external events, but choices you make through your thoughts. You can control how you feel by changing your perspective. Now here's a logical exercise. Major premise: I can control my thoughts. Minor premise: my feelings come from my thoughts. Conclusion: I can control my feelings. Reflect on this formula and apply it every time you feel a negative emotion. Living in the present. The author stresses the importance of living in the present moment. Worrying about the future or regretting the past only keeps you from enjoying what really matters, the now. Practical exercise. Take a few minutes a day to focus on your breathing and what's happening around you. Be thankful for the small pleasures of the present. Final reflection. What decisions can you make today to live authentically? What negative emotions can you replace with empowering thoughts? Living fully is a daily choice that begins by taking charge of yourself. What small step can you take today toward the life you truly desire? Chapter 2. Happiness and Your Own IQ. True intelligence is not measured by degrees, but by your ability to choose happiness. Wayne Dyer challenges the conventional notion of intelligence by redefining it as the ability to live a full and happy life. In a society where academic achievements and degrees are often seen as the measure of success, Dyer reminds us that true wisdom lies in how we choose to feel each day. Intelligence as a choice for happiness. Do you know someone with multiple degrees who seems to always be dissatisfied or stressed? On the other hand, perhaps you have met people without great academic achievements, but who radiate joy and enjoy life to the fullest. According to Dyer, the difference is not in their level of knowledge, but in their ability to choose thoughts that fuel their happiness. Real intelligence is the ability to face everyday problems with a positive mindset, looking for solutions instead of focusing on the difficulties. The myth of the nervous breakdown. Dyer demystifies the concept of a nervous breakdown. He explains that nerves do not collapse on their own. Rather, it is our emotional response to negative thoughts that leads us to feel overwhelmed. Here's a thought for you. You have control over your thoughts. No one can force you to keep negative thoughts in your mind. Just as you can choose what you eat, you can also choose which thoughts to keep and which to discard. How to manage negative thoughts. Recognize negative thoughts. The first step is to identify when you are letting negative thoughts dominate your mind. Question their validity. Ask yourself, is this thought helpful? Is it based on facts or just temporary emotions? Replace them with positive thoughts. Replace those thoughts with empowering ones. For example, instead of thinking, I'm not good enough for this job, say, I'm learning and growing every day, and every step brings me closer to my goals. Here's a practical exercise. Develop your emotional intelligence. Make a list of the negative thoughts you tend to have. Write a positive alternative for each of them. Practice repeating those positive affirmations when negative thoughts arise. An example would be, negative thought, I always fail at everything. Positive alternative, every mistake is an opportunity to learn and improve. Happiness as a daily decision. Dyer reminds us that happiness is not something we find on the outside, but a decision we make every day. Even in the midst of problems, we can choose to focus on the good, on what we can control, and on opportunities for growth. Start each day with a positive affirmation, such as, today I choose to be happy and take advantage of every moment. Here's a reflection. How do you define intelligence in your life? What negative thoughts could you start to discard today? Remember, true intelligence is not about accumulating knowledge, but about learning to live with purpose, joy, and gratitude. Happiness does not depend on external circumstances or academic achievements. It's a skill you can cultivate by choosing thoughts that empower you and bring you closer to a more fulfilling life. Make happiness your priority and make it your true measure of success. Chapter 3. Choosing how you'll feel. Your emotions don't control you, you choose them. Wayne Dyer challenges us to see our emotions from a whole new perspective. Instead of assuming our feelings are automatic reactions to external events, he invites us to recognize that they are actually conscious choices. This concept, though simple, has the power to transform the way we experience our lives. The power to control your emotions. Dyer uses logical reasoning to explain it. Major premise, I can control my thoughts. Minor premise, my feelings come from my thoughts. Conclusion, I can control my feelings. If you can come to terms with this idea, you'll discover that you have much more power than you thought. You're not a victim of your emotions, you're the creator of them. An example, changing your reaction. Think of a common situation. Someone treats you rudely. You might automatically say, that person made me angry. But if you analyze the situation, you'll notice that it's not the act itself that's making you angry, but your interpretation of it. Let's do a mental exercise. When someone acts in ways that normally annoy you, stop and ask yourself, what thought is generating this emotion? Can I replace this thought with one that would benefit me more? Instead of thinking, he disrespected me, you might choose, maybe he's having a bad day, but I don't need to carry this around with me. How to choose different emotions. Dyer encourages us to consider how our lives would change if we started choosing positive emotions in difficult situations. Identify the negative emotion. Be aware of how you feel and why you feel that way. Choose a positive emotion. Ask yourself, what emotion would benefit me most right now? Replace the negative thought. Change the narrative in your mind to favor the positive emotion. An example. Situation. A sarcastic comment at work. Negative thought. I was disrespected. Why do they always treat me like that? Alternative thought. That comment doesn't define my worth. I choose to ignore it and stay focused on my goals. The impact of your emotional choices. Choosing how you feel doesn't mean ignoring your emotions or repressing them. Rather, it's about taking responsibility for them and deciding what impact they will have on your life. By doing so, you not only reduce stress, but you also improve your overall well-being and relationships. When you choose emotions that empower you instead of emotions that hold you back, you become the architect of your own happiness. Let's do a practical exercise. Experiment with your emotions. Think about a recent situation that made you angry or sad. Write it down. Identify the thought behind that emotion. What interpretation did you make of the event? Reframe your thinking. Find an alternative way of looking at the situation that generates a more positive emotion. What impact would it have on your life if you could choose emotions that benefit you instead of emotions that hold you back? Conclusion: take control of your emotions. Wayne Dyer leaves us with a powerful lesson. You are not a passive spectator in your emotional experience. By learning to identify and change your thoughts, you can choose how you feel in any situation. The next time you face a difficult situation, stop and ask yourself, what emotion do I choose in this moment? Remember, emotional freedom begins with a conscious decision. Chapter 4. A difficult task. Learning not to be miserable. Emotional suffering is a choice, not a destiny. Wayne Dyer invites us to reflect on an uncomfortable truth. Many times, misfortune is a habit that we cling to because it is familiar or even comfortable. Although it may seem contradictory, our negative emotions can become a kind of refuge. Changing this pattern requires courage, but the result is a freer and more fulfilling life. Suffering as a choice. Dyer asserts that our emotions, including sadness, frustration, and anger, are neither inevitable nor permanent. While we cannot control external events, we can decide how to interpret them and what emotions we want to experience. Here's a thought. When we hold on to negative thoughts, we lose sight of our ability to choose a different path. Misfortune is not something that happens to us, but something we often perpetuate through our thoughts. Question your negative emotions. Dyer proposes a simple but powerful exercise to break the habit of misfortune. The next time you feel upset, ask yourself these two questions. Why am I choosing this emotion? Recognize that even though the event is external, the emotion you feel is an internal response that you can control. What do I gain by feeling this way? Sometimes anger or sadness offer us a false sense of power or allow us to avoid facing certain aspects of our lives. Identifying this pattern is the first step to breaking free from it. An example. Situation: someone criticizes you at work. Initial thought: I feel bad because someone made an unfair comment. Questioning: why am I choosing to feel this way? What do I gain from this discomfort? Reframing: I can choose to ignore this comment and move forward with confidence. Why we hold on to suffering. Suffering can become a habit. It feels familiar and, in a sense, comfortable because it doesn't require us to confront ourselves or take responsibility for our emotions. But this habit has a cost. It limits us, wears us down, and prevents us from enjoying life. By consciously choosing not to hold on to misfortune, you regain your emotional freedom and energy to focus on what really matters. How to choose emotional freedom. Accept your emotional responsibility. Recognize that, although you can't always control circumstances, you have the power to decide how you react to them. Replace negative thoughts. Every time you detect a thought that perpetuates your misfortune, replace it with one that fosters calmness and optimism. Practice gratitude. Gratitude is a powerful tool to replace negativity. Make a list of 3 things you are grateful for each day. An example. If you feel frustrated because something didn't go the way you expected, stop and ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? How can I be grateful for what did go well? Change takes effort, but it's worth it. Learning not to be miserable isn't an immediate process. Like any habit, it requires practice, consistency, and a genuine willingness to change. However, every small step you make toward a more positive and free mindset will bring you closer to a fuller life. Start with small steps. Every time you choose a positive emotion over a negative one, you'll be strengthening your ability to live at peace with yourself. A practical exercise: choose not to be miserable today. Identify a recurring negative emotion, for example, anger, sadness, or frustration. Make a list of situations that trigger it. Be honest with yourself about how these situations affect your emotional state. Develop an action plan. Think about how you can respond differently next time. Here's a thought for you. What negative emotions could you choose to leave behind today? How would your life change if you decided to opt for calm, gratitude, or joy instead of frustration? Conclusion: misfortune is not your destiny. Wayne Dyer reminds us that we have the power to change our relationship with suffering. By taking responsibility for our emotions and learning to question the thoughts that harm us, we can break the habit of misfortune and open ourselves to a freer, more fulfilling life. The next time you feel upset, stop and ask yourself, what do I gain from this emotion? What can I do to change it? Remember, every emotional choice you make is a step toward freedom. Chapter 5. Living in the present moment. The only real moment you have is now. Wayne Dyer invites us to reflect on a powerful truth. The present moment is the only thing that really exists. Yet, we often get caught up in worries about the future or regrets about the past, which prevents us from enjoying what we have here and now. The weight of the past and the anxiety of the future. How many times have you relived a past mistake in your mind? Or have you allowed the fear of possible failure in the future to hold you back? Dyer explains that these worries are like chains that bind us and prevent us from experiencing the fullness of the present. For reflection, the past no longer exists. No matter how many times you analyze it, you cannot change it. The future is just an idea, a scenario that has not yet materialized. The only time you really have to live, love, create, and enjoy is now. How to live in the present. Take a moment to observe your surroundings. Pause and pay attention to what surrounds you. Observe the details, listen to the sounds, feel the environment. This exercise helps you anchor yourself in the present. Practical tip: if you are eating, savor each bite. If you are walking, notice how the ground feels under your feet. Be grateful for what you have in this moment. Gratitude is a powerful tool to focus on the present. Even in difficult times, there is always something to be grateful for: your health, the support of a friend, the simple fact of being alive. Practical exercise: every night, make a list of 3 things you are grateful for that day. Free yourself from the past and future. Whenever you find yourself caught up in thoughts about the past or future, ask yourself, can I do something about this now? If the answer is no, let it go. Finding the present amid the chaos. Imagine you're standing in a long line and you start to feel frustrated. Your mind might wander to the past, remembering other times when waiting wasted your time, or to the future, anticipating being late somewhere. Conscious alternative. Stop and take a deep breath. Observe your surroundings, the people, the place, the sounds. Ask yourself, what can I enjoy or be grateful for right now? This simple shift in perspective turns a potentially stressful moment into an opportunity to practice calm and gratitude. The present as a point of power. Dyer says the present moment is where your power lies. It's the only space where you can make decisions, take action, and experience life. By focusing on the now, you reclaim your energy and reduce anxiety. Every time you choose to be present, you're cultivating a fuller, more meaningful life. Practice mindfulness. Find a moment in your day to stop. It can be while you're drinking your coffee, while you're walking, or before you go to sleep. Focus on your breathing. Inhale deeply, feel the air entering your body, and exhale slowly. Observe your thoughts. If your mind wanders to the past or the future, gently bring your attention back to the present. Here's a thought. What could you enjoy right now if you chose to focus only on the present? Benefits of living in the present. Less stress. By not worrying about the past or the future, you reduce the emotional burden. More clarity. Being present allows you to make more conscious and effective decisions. More gratitude. By focusing on what you have now, you discover reasons to be grateful. Conclusion. Choose the now. Wayne Dyer reminds us that the past cannot be changed and the future has not yet arrived. The true art of living is to take advantage of every present moment, finding gratitude and joy in what we have now. Whenever you find yourself caught up in thoughts about the past or the future, repeat this affirmation: now is enough. Practice gratitude and mindfulness, and you will discover how the present can transform your life. Chapter 6. First love, loving yourself. Love for others begins with love for yourself. Wayne Dyer addresses an essential and often overlooked truth. You cannot give to others what you do not give to yourself. Self-love is not an act of selfishness, but a basic necessity for building healthy relationships and living authentically. Without self-love, we seek external validation, which leaves us vulnerable to emotional dependency and dissatisfaction. The silent epidemic of lack of self-love. Have you ever looked in the mirror and criticized what you see? This is one of the most common forms of lack of self-love. Dyer points out that we live in a society that encourages self-criticism and minimizes the importance of accepting ourselves as we are. For reflection, self-love is not an indulgence, but a necessary foundation for emotional well-being. Without it, our relationships with others become unbalanced and dependent. True selfishness. We are often taught that caring about ourselves is selfish. But Dyer reminds us that true selfishness is relying on others to feel valuable. When we constantly seek external approval, we give our power and value away to others. Self-love benefits not only the person who practices it, but also those around them. A person who loves and respects themselves can give genuine love, without expecting something in return. How to cultivate self-love? Accept who you are now. The first step to loving yourself is to accept your imperfections and strengths. Recognize that you are a constantly growing human being, not a finished product. Practical exercise. Every morning, look in the mirror and say something positive about yourself. It can be a compliment about your appearance, your abilities, or your character. Stop seeking external approval. Understanding that your worth does not depend on the opinion of others is liberating. Ask yourself, am I living up to my own values or the expectations of others? Practical tip: write a list of your unique qualities and talents. Review it whenever you feel the need to seek external validation. Forgive yourself. We all make mistakes. Loving others means forgiving them. The same goes for yourself. Practical example: make a list of past mistakes that still weigh on you and write a forgiveness statement for each one. For example, I forgive myself for not speaking up confidently in that meeting. I am learning and improving. Set healthy boundaries. Loving yourself also means protecting your time, energy, and emotions. Learn to say no when something doesn't align with your values or weighs you down. Loving yourself to love others. Dyer explains that only when you accept and value yourself can you genuinely love others. Without self-love, our relationships can become transactional, expecting others to fill emotional voids that only we can fill. Self-love is not a luxury, it's a responsibility. By learning to love yourself, you also teach others how to treat and respect you. An inspiring example: recognizing your own worth. A woman who was always seeking approval from her partner realized, after years of dissatisfaction, that her problem was not him, but her own lack of self-love. By working on accepting and valuing herself, she not only improved her self-esteem, but her relationship was transformed as well. Loving yourself can change not only your relationship with yourself, but also the dynamics of your relationships with others. Let's do a practical exercise: your self-love journal. Make a list of things you like about yourself. Include both internal and external aspects. Write a daily affirmation. For example, I am enough just the way I am. Practice an act of self-love each day. This can be taking time to do something you enjoy, setting a boundary, or just resting. For reflection, what aspects do you need to work on to improve your self-love? What small step can you take today to start valuing yourself more? Conclusion: self-love as the foundation of everything. Wayne Dyer reminds us that self-love is the first step to building a full life and authentic relationships. It's not selfish to prioritize yourself, it's necessary. By learning to love yourself, you free yourself from the need for external approval and allow yourself to give genuine love to others. Look in the mirror and say something positive to yourself today. Practice self-compassion and remember that the path to self-love is a process, not a destination. Chapter 7. Defining self-love. Self-love is not arrogance, it is acceptance. Wayne Dyer redefines the concept of self-love, setting it apart from the stereotypes of selfishness and egotism that often surround it. Instead of seeking external validation, self-love is a commitment to yourself, accepting who you are with your strengths and weaknesses, and living according to what truly makes you happy. What is self-love? Self-love is not about thinking you are better than others, or putting yourself above them. It is an act of deep acceptance. It means looking in the mirror and acknowledging both your virtues and your flaws without judging yourself, but appreciating yourself as a complete human being. Let's reflect on this. The true measure of your self-love is how much you value your needs, your desires, and your dreams, without allowing outside opinions to determine your perception of yourself. The myth of external validation. We live in a society that conditions us to constantly seek approval, likes on social media, praise at work, or acceptance from family and friends. Dyer explains that this pattern is unsustainable because it makes us emotionally dependent on what others think of us. Self-love doesn't require anyone else's approval. Freeing yourself from that need allows you to make more authentic decisions that are aligned with your values. Imagine a life without external validation. Think for a moment what your life would be like if you stopped worrying about what others think. What would you do differently? What decisions would you make? Dyer encourages us to break away from the idea that our worth depends on the opinion of others and to focus our energy on what truly makes us happy. How to develop authentic self-love. Accept your strengths and weaknesses. No one is perfect, and that's okay. Recognizing your strengths helps you build confidence, while accepting your weaknesses frees you from the pressure of being something you're not. Practical exercise. Make 2 lists, one with your positive qualities and another with aspects you would like to improve. Be grateful for both. They are part of your uniqueness. Break away from the need for external validation. Reflect on the decisions you have made based on what others expect of you. Ask yourself, does this really make me happy or am I trying to please someone else? Practical tip. Practice making small decisions based only on what you want, without seeking approval or justifying yourself. Set your own rules. Define what a full and authentic life means to you. Make a list of your values and prioritize them in your daily life. Free yourself from other people's opinions. A young professional used to accept projects at work that she was not interested in just to gain the respect of her colleagues. One day, she decided to prioritize her true passions and took on a project aligned with her interests, even though it was not popular. In doing so, she discovered not only greater satisfaction, but also a renewed respect for herself. When you live by your own rules, you not only find greater happiness, but you inspire others to do the same. Let's do a practical exercise. Practice self-love. Identify a recent decision based on external validation. Ask yourself if it was truly aligned with your values. Define an action that represents your authentic desires. For example, saying no to something you're not interested in or giving yourself permission to pursue a goal you've always put off. Repeat this affirmation daily. I am enough just the way I am, and I don't need anyone's approval to value my life. Living by your own rules. Self-love is ultimately a commitment to living by your own rules. It's not about ignoring others, but about prioritizing your well-being and values without letting outside opinions dictate your path. When you stop relying on validation from others, you take back your power and discover that true happiness is in being true to yourself. Bottom line, define your self-love today. Wayne Dyer reminds us that self-love isn't something we should borrow or seek from others. It's a gift we give ourselves by fully accepting ourselves and living according to what makes us happy. Take a moment to ask yourself, am I living by my own rules or following other people's expectations? Take a step today to prioritize yourself and begin building a more authentic life. Chapter 8. Body Love. Your body is not a problem to solve. It's a gift to be thankful for. Wayne Dyer encourages us to reconsider our relationship with our bodies, a relationship that is often marked by criticism, dissatisfaction, and comparison. But what if instead of focusing on what we think is wrong, we started thanking our bodies for what they do for us every day? Negative self-talk about the body. How many times have you looked in the mirror and said to yourself, I'm not thin enough, strong enough, or attractive enough? This type of self-talk is more common than we think, and yet it is deeply damaging. The body is not just an appearance. It is the vehicle that allows us to experience life. Every part of you, from your feet to your smile, has a purpose and deserves to be honored. Transforming self-criticism into gratitude. Dyer proposes a radical change in our perception. Instead of criticizing our bodies, we should thank them. This change not only improves our self-esteem, but also fosters a healthier relationship with ourselves. Let's do a practical exercise. Stand in front of a mirror. Instead of looking for imperfections, look for reasons to be thankful. For example, thank you, legs, for holding me up and taking me to so many places. Thank you, eyes, for allowing me to see the world. The body as a temple. Dyer describes the body as a temple that houses our essence. When we see it from this perspective, we understand that taking care of it is not a chore, but an act of love and respect towards ourselves. Start treating your body as you would treat something valuable. Feed it nutritious food, move it carefully, and get enough rest. How to cultivate body love. Shift your focus. Instead of focusing on what you perceive as flaws, appreciate what your body does for you every day. Practical example: if you feel frustrated with a part of your body, think about its function. Your hands allow you to create, your feet take you where you need to go. Take care of your body with intention. Self-care is not a luxury, it is a necessity. Practice healthy habits such as conscious eating, exercise, and adequate rest. Practical tip: dedicate at least 15 minutes a day to something that improves your physical well-being, whether it's stretching, a walk, or a healthy meal. Speak kindly to yourself. Words have power. Change phrases like, "My body isn't good enough," to, "I'm grateful for everything my body does for me." Here's an inspiring example: rebuilding your relationship with your body. A woman who had spent years struggling with her self-esteem decided to start a body gratitude journal. Each day she wrote down one thing she loved about her body. After a few weeks, she noticed that she felt more confident and positive, not because her body had changed, but because she had changed the way she saw it. When you change the way you perceive your body, you change the way you feel about yourself. Let's do a practical exercise: body gratitude. Every night, write down 3 things you are grateful for in your body. In front of the mirror, say a positive affirmation about yourself, such as, "My body is strong and capable." Do one daily action that takes care of your body: a walk, a nutritious meal, or a relaxing bath. The impact of body love. When you love and care for your body, you not only improve your physical well-being, but also your self-esteem and your connection with yourself. This change of perspective frees you from comparisons and allows you to live more authentically. What would change in your life if you started treating your body with love and gratitude instead of criticism? Conclusion: be grateful for your body every day. Wayne Dyer reminds us that our body is a unique gift. It is not perfect, but it does not need to be to deserve our respect and care. Every day is an opportunity to nourish it, thank it, and value it as the temple that it is. The next time you look in the mirror, instead of looking for flaws, look for reasons to be thankful. Your body supports you, allows you to live, and deserves all your respect and love. Chapter 9. Freeing yourself from the need for approval. Your worth does not depend on the opinion of others. From an early age, we learn to seek approval from those around us: parents, teachers, friends. This behavior becomes a habit, and over time, it can transform into an emotional trap. Wayne Dyer invites us to break with this constant need for external validation and regain control of our lives. The approval trap. The search for approval is exhausting and unsustainable. You will never be able to please everyone, and most importantly, you don't need to. Living based on the opinion of others not only limits your decisions, but also distances you from your own values and desires. The reflection. Every time you depend on the approval of others, you are giving them the power to decide for you. Freeing yourself from this need is an act of empowerment and authenticity. How to free yourself from the need for approval. Learn to say no without guilt. Saying no is an act of self-care and respect for your own boundaries. You don't need to justify your decisions to anyone. Practical example: if someone asks you for something you can't or don't want to do, calmly respond, "Thank you for thinking of me, but I can't commit to that right now." Trust your intuition. Your intuition is a powerful tool. Learn to listen to it and value your decisions for what they mean to you, not how they will be perceived by others. Practical tip: before making a decision, ask yourself, does this align with what I really want? Accept that you can't please everyone. Try to remember that every person has different perspectives and expectations. It's impossible to satisfy them all, and trying to do so will only lead to frustration. Practical reflection. Ask yourself, do I prefer to be true to myself or please others at the expense of my happiness? Fear of rejection. The fear of not being accepted is one of the main reasons we seek approval. Dyer challenges us to face this fear with courage and to remember that rejection does not define our worth. Here's an example. If you share an idea in a meeting and someone rejects it, instead of taking it personally, interpret the situation objectively. That rejection is just an opinion. It has nothing to do with my worth. Breaking the chain of external validation. The key to freeing yourself from this need is to cultivate a strong relationship with yourself. The more you value and respect yourself, the less you will depend on the approval of others. Let's do an exercise. Make a list of decisions you've made recently just to please others. Reflect on how those decisions made you feel. Write down how you would have acted if you had prioritized your own desires and values. The power of authenticity. When you stop seeking external approval, you discover a new freedom. You start acting from your values, making confident decisions, and living more authentically. Every time you choose to be authentic instead of seeking to please, you are building a life that truly represents you. An inspiring example: saying no without guilt. A man who was always taking on extra tasks at work to please his boss realized that this was affecting his health and relationships. He decided to set boundaries and started saying no to projects that were not a priority for him. Although he felt guilty at first, he soon noticed that he was more productive and less stressed. Saying no when something doesn't align with your values not only improves your well-being, but it also allows you to devote more energy to what really matters. Bottom line: break free and live authentically. Wayne Dyer reminds us that constantly seeking approval is a burden we don't need to carry. By letting go of this need, you take back your power, your authenticity, and your ability to live by your own rules. The next time you're faced with a decision, ask yourself, am I doing this because I really want to or because I'm trying to please someone else? Choose what makes you happy and aligns with your values. Chapter 10. You don't need approval from others. The need for approval is equivalent to giving your power away to the opinions of others. Wayne Dyer addresses one of the most common emotional traps: the search for external validation. In our society, from a young age, we are taught to prioritize the opinions of others in order to feel accepted. Although this may seem innocuous, relying on external approval distances us from our authenticity and causes us to give up our emotional independence. The trap of external validation. How many times have you modified your behavior, said yes to something you didn't want, or acted a certain way to avoid rejection? Dyer explains that this pattern begins in childhood. Origins of approval seeking. In our childhood, we seek acceptance from authority figures such as parents and teachers. This behavior is initially necessary to learn social rules. However, over time, this need can become a deep conditioning, leading us to prioritize external opinions over our own needs and values. When we live seeking approval, we let others determine our worth. This habit limits our decisions and makes us emotionally dependent. Why do we seek approval from others? Social conditioning. From a young age, we learn that to be accepted, we must please. This leads us to adapt our actions to avoid conflict or rejection. Fear of rejection. Disapproval feels like an attack on our identity. Instead of taking risks, we prefer to conform. Internal insecurity. When we do not cultivate a solid relationship with ourselves, we look to others for the validation that we cannot give ourselves. The consequences of seeking approval. Dyer invites us to reflect on how this behavior affects our lives. Fear-based decisions. We say yes to things we don't want to do just to avoid rejection. Loss of authenticity. We modify who we are to fit into groups or meet external expectations. Frustration and resentment. By living to please others, we sacrifice our happiness, which generates internal discontent. Let's take an example. Imagine that you accept a project at work that you are not interested in because you do not want to disappoint your boss. Over time, you feel exhausted and frustrated, but you find it difficult to say no. This is an example of how seeking approval can affect your well-being. How to break free from the need for approval. Recognize the pattern. The first step to breaking free is to identify when you are acting to seek approval. Ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to or to please someone else? Value your own opinion. Cultivate a strong relationship with yourself. Practice trusting your decisions and what is best for you. Practical exercise. Before you make a decision, write down your reasons for doing so. Make sure they are aligned with your values, not the expectations of others. Learn to say no. Saying no is a way to set healthy boundaries. You don't have to justify your decisions to others. Practical tip: practice simple phrases like, "I can't commit to that right now." Accept rejection as a part of life. Not everyone will agree with you, and that's okay. Rejection doesn't define your worth, other people's perspectives do. Practical exercise: break the cycle of approval. Reflect on a recent situation. Did you act in a certain way to gain approval or avoid rejection? Write down how you could have acted from authenticity. Imagine what would have happened if you had prioritized your own desires and values. Apply this learning. Next time you face a similar decision, act from your own principles, not from the need to please. Let's take an inspiring example: reclaiming authenticity. A woman who always accepted social engagements so as not to disappoint her friends began to set clear boundaries. Although she felt guilty at first, she soon noticed that she had more time and energy to devote to the things she truly enjoyed. Her friends respected her honesty, and her relationships became more genuine. When you stop seeking approval, you reclaim your time, energy, and authenticity. The value of emotional independence. Freeing yourself from the need for approval doesn't mean ignoring others or acting selfishly. It's about finding a balance between your own values and the relationships you maintain. Every time you prioritize your authenticity over external validation, you strengthen your emotional independence and move closer to a more fulfilling life. Conclusion: live for yourself. Wayne Dyer reminds us that seeking approval is an unnecessary burden. Your worth depends not on the opinion of others, but on the relationship you have with yourself. The next time you face a decision, ask yourself, does this make me happy or is it just trying to please someone else? Make your well-being a priority. Chapter 11. The dangers of relying on external approval. Always prioritizing the opinion of others is an act of self-abandonment. Wayne Dyer invites us to reflect on how reliance on external approval can become an emotional trap that distances us from our own needs and desires. Constantly acting to please others, even if it seems like an act of generosity, often means ignoring ourselves. The dilemma of choosing others over yourself. Imagine you have a day off, and you decide to dedicate it to resting. But suddenly, a friend calls you to ask for help with something. Even though you don't want to go, you agree because you're afraid of disappointing him. This seemingly small situation reflects a deeper pattern: prioritizing other people's expectations over our own well-being. For reflection: helping others is valuable, but it should not be done at the expense of your own needs, especially when this happens on a recurring basis. Ignoring your desires to avoid the disapproval of others is an act of self-abandonment. How to recognize the trap of external approval. Dyer explains that this dependency manifests itself in subtle but consistent ways. Saying yes when you want to say no. Accepting tasks or commitments you're not interested in for fear of disappointing. Modifying your decisions to avoid conflict. Choosing something you don't want just to keep the peace. Seeking validation in everything you do. Needing others to approve of your choices in order to feel safe. An example: agreeing to go to a social gathering when you'd rather stay home because you're afraid others will think you're antisocial. This type of behavior leads you to act against your authenticity. The consequences of relying on external approval. Loss of authenticity. By acting to please, you disconnect from what you really want and need. Emotional exhaustion. Trying to meet everyone's expectations can be emotionally and physically exhausting. Resentment and frustration. When you constantly prioritize others over yourself, it's easy to feel trapped and resentful. How to break the pattern of dependency. Practice saying no. Learning to set healthy boundaries is essential. Saying no doesn't mean being selfish, but valuing your own needs. Practical example: if someone asks you for help and you can't or don't want to, calmly say, "I'd like to help you, but I can't commit today." Reflect before acting. Before making a decision, ask yourself, am I doing this because I really want to or because I'm afraid of what people will think of me if I don't? Value your well-being. Prioritize activities and decisions that make you feel good about yourself. Remember that taking care of yourself isn't selfish, it's an act of self-love. Let's do a practical exercise. Evaluate your decisions. Think about a recent commitment. Reflect on whether you accepted it out of your own desire or to please someone else. Make a list of situations where you said yes when you wanted to say no. Identify patterns. Commit to setting a boundary. Practice saying no in a future situation where your needs are more important. Now, here's an example, taking back control. A man who was always taking on extra tasks at work began to feel overwhelmed and frustrated. He decided to set boundaries, explaining to his boss that he could be more effective if he focused his energy on specific projects. Although it was difficult at first, he soon noticed that he felt more satisfied and less stressed. Saying no not only protects your well-being, but also improves the quality of your contributions when you choose to say yes. Think before you act. Dyer encourages us to pause before making decisions driven by the need to please. Ask yourself, what do I really want to do? What needs am I sacrificing by saying yes? How can I prioritize my well-being in this situation? Bottom line, prioritize yourself without guilt. Freeing yourself from external approval doesn't mean stopping caring about others, but rather finding a balance where you can be generous without ignoring yourself. Learning to say no and value your well-being is an act of self-care that also improves your relationships with others. The next time you're faced with a decision, stop and ask yourself if you're acting from a place of authenticity or out of fear of disapproval. Remember, you can't please everyone, but you can live true to yourself. Chapter 12. Strategies to overcome this need. Your worth doesn't depend on what other people think, it depends on what you think of yourself. Wayne Dyer offers us clear and effective tools to overcome the need for external approval. Recognizing and releasing this dependency is a powerful act that gives us back emotional freedom and allows us to live authentically. The approval list exercise. Dyer suggests a practical exercise that helps us identify and challenge patterns of emotional dependency. Make a list of the people whose approval you feel you need. Maybe it's your parents, your partner, your friends, or even colleagues at work. Imagine what would happen if you didn't have their approval. Ask yourself, would it really be that bad? Many times, you'll find that the consequences aren't as significant as you thought. Reflect on why your worth depends on their opinions. This step is key. It helps you identify the root of your need for validation and start questioning it. When you recognize that your worth is not determined by the opinions of others, you begin to release the power you had given away to those around you. How to identify patterns of dependency. Dyer's exercise is not only revealing, but it also helps you see patterns of behavior you may not have noticed before. Signs that you seek external approval. You change your opinion to align with that of others. You accept commitments you don't want for fear of disappointing. You feel anxious when someone disagrees with you. You seek praise or validation after making a decision. An example would be, imagine that at work you make an important decision, but then you feel the need to ask several colleagues if it was the right decision. This behavior reflects a search for validation that you might want to reevaluate. Breaking free from the pattern of approval. Evaluate your relationships. Review the dynamics with the people whose approval you seek. Ask yourself if those relationships bring you value or if they only reinforce your dependency. Practice self-validation. Learn to trust your own decisions and value your opinions. Practical exercise. Before seeking someone else's opinion, write down why you believe your choice is valid and how it aligns with your values. Accept disagreement. Not everyone will agree with you, and that's okay. Learn to accept disagreement without it affecting your self-confidence. Focus on your own values. Define what's important to you and use those values as a guide, rather than seeking to align with others' expectations. Breaking the cycle of approval. A young woman who was always seeking validation from her family decided to try Dyer's exercise. As she wrote her list, she realized that many of the decisions she made, from her career to her lifestyle, were driven by a desire to please them. When she allowed herself to prioritize her own values, she experienced a sense of freedom she'd never felt before. Identifying who you've given your emotional power to is the first step toward taking it back. Let's do an exercise. Make your approval list. Write down the people whose approval you think you need. Be honest with yourself. This list can include important figures in your life, but also people you interact with occasionally. Imagine a scenario where you didn't have their approval. Reflect on how that would feel and whether it would really affect your long-term well-being. Answer these questions. Why do I feel like my worth depends on their opinion? What can I do to validate my own decisions without seeking their approval? Benefits of overcoming the need for approval. Increased self-confidence. You learn to value your choices and trust in your abilities. More genuine relationships. You stop acting to please and begin to be more authentic in your interactions. Emotional freedom. You no longer feel tied to the expectations of others. What would change in your life if you stopped seeking approval from others? Conclusion. Regain your emotional independence. Wayne Dyer reminds us that seeking external approval not only limits us, but also distances us from our authenticity. By applying this exercise, you can identify patterns of dependency and begin to build a stronger relationship with yourself. Do the list exercise and begin to prioritize your own values and desires. Each step you take toward self-validation is a step toward a freer and fuller life. Chapter 13. Breaking with the past. You are what you choose to be today, not what you chose to be before. Wayne Dyer invites us to reflect on a liberating truth. We are not prisoners of our past decisions. Although our experiences can shape who we are, they do not have to define us. This chapter is a call to release the chains of the past and live with full awareness of the present and its possibilities. The weight of the past. How many times have you defined yourself by your mistakes? Phrases like, "I've always been like this," or "I'm not good at this because I failed once," become limiting mantras that reinforce negative beliefs about ourselves. According to Dyer, the past only has power over us if we give it permission to do so. Reflection. Your identity is not determined by your past decisions, but by the ones you choose to make today. Every day is an opportunity to redefine yourself. Breaking the labels of the past. Identify limiting beliefs. What labels have you adopted because of your past experiences? For example, "I'm not creative," "I always fail in relationships," "I'll never be able to change." Challenge those beliefs. Ask yourself, is this really true or is it just a perception based on a specific moment? Replace them with positive affirmations. Change limiting self-talk to one that reflects your current potential. For example, "I am learning to be more creative. My relationships are improving as I grow emotionally." The past does not define your present. Dyer reminds us that the past no longer exists, it only lives in our minds as memories. Holding on to those memories limits our ability to grow and evolve. Let's take an example. Imagine that you once failed in a business and you constantly tell yourself, "I'm not good at business." This belief could prevent you from trying again, even if you now have more experience and resources to succeed. The past only has power over you if you let it. Every mistake is a lesson, not a sentence. Now let's do another practical exercise, letting go of the past. Write down an event from the past that you believe defines you. Be specific about how this event affects your current thoughts. Reflect on what you learned. What lesson can you draw from this experience? Make an affirmation for change. For example, instead of "I've always been impatient," say, "I'm learning to be more patient every day." The power of the present. Dyer emphasizes that the present is the only moment we truly possess. If you cling to the past, you waste the opportunity to create something new and meaningful now. What could you accomplish if you chose to let go of a limiting belief based on your past? Here's an example, redefining the present. A woman who had been criticized as a child for not being smart enough grew up avoiding intellectual challenges. One day, she decided to enroll in a course she had always avoided for fear of failure. Not only did she pass with flying colors, but she discovered that her potential was intact, waiting to be developed. When you decide to break away from past beliefs, you open the door to new opportunities and experiences. How to live beyond the past. Accept your mistakes. Instead of regretting them, recognize that each mistake has taught you a lesson. Allow yourself to evolve. You don't have to be the person you were yesterday today. Make room for transformation. Focus on the present. Practice mindfulness to anchor yourself in the here and now, leaving behind the weight of what was. Conclusion: break free from the shackles of the past. Wayne Dyer reminds us that the past does not define who we are. Every day is an opportunity to choose a new path, one based on our current aspirations and not on yesterday's mistakes or successes. Reflect on this question: if the past had no power over me, what choices would I make today to get closer to the life I want? Chapter 14. How the I Ams began. You are not your labels, you are who you choose to be today. From childhood, we have absorbed labels and beliefs that others assign to us or that we ourselves adopted. These phrases, repeated over and over, become internal truths that guide our decisions and shape our identity. But Wayne Dyer invites us to challenge these labels and claim our right to define ourselves anew. The origin of the I Ams. As children, we depend on adults to understand ourselves. If someone tells us we are bad at math or shy, we are likely to internalize those words and make them part of our identity. Case in point: a child who is constantly told, "You are clumsy," may grow up avoiding physical activities for fear of failing, thereby reinforcing that label with every choice. Now for a thought. These labels are not absolute truths, they are just perceptions we have adopted. Just because you have been a certain way in the past does not mean you should continue to be that way in the future. Labels as self-fulfilling prophecies. When you believe a negative label about yourself, you are likely to avoid situations that might challenge it. Not only does this reinforce the label, but it also limits your growth and experiences. If you believe you are bad at public speaking, you will avoid situations that require that skill. In doing so, you will never have the opportunity to improve, which perpetuates the belief that you are not good at it. The power of labels lies in our belief in them. By challenging them, we open the door to new possibilities. How to change limiting labels. Identify your I Ams. Make a list of the labels you've assigned to yourself over the years, especially those you consider negative. Reflect on their origin. Ask yourself, where did this belief come from? Is it really true or just a perception? Create new affirmations. Replace negative labels with positive affirmations. For example, change "I'm bad at math" to "I can learn math with practice." Take action to challenge the label. If you've always believed you're shy, look for opportunities to step out of your comfort zone, such as starting conversations in safe environments. Let's do another exercise, redefining your I Ams. Make a list of your labels. Write down all the phrases that start with "I am" that you think limit you. Challenge each one. Write down why you think this label doesn't have to be true. For example, if you wrote "I am disorganized," you might reflect, "I have been disorganized in the past, but I can improve with more conscious habits." Replace them with positive affirmations. For each limiting label, write a new affirmation that reinforces your potential. An example: changing an I am. A man who always believed he was bad at socializing decided to challenge that label. He started by attending small social events and practicing simple interactions, like starting a conversation with a stranger. Over time, he discovered that he could not only socialize, but that he enjoyed doing so. Labels only limit you as long as you let them. By challenging them, you can discover skills and qualities you didn't know you had. The power of redefining yourself. Wayne Dyer reminds us that we can choose how we want to see ourselves at any time. Just because we've believed something for years doesn't mean we can't change it. What labels have you been carrying around that no longer reflect who you are? Bottom line, you are more than your labels. Labels are just words. They don't define your worth or potential. By acknowledging their source and replacing them with positive affirmations, you can free yourself from their limitations and build a more authentic and powerful identity. Go through the exercise of redefining your I Ams and take concrete actions to challenge the labels that limit you. Each small step is a victory toward the person you truly want to be. Chapter 15. Useless emotions, guilt and worry. Guilt lives in the past, worry in the future. Both rob you of the present. Wayne Dyer invites us to reflect on two emotions that consume our energy without offering real solutions: guilt and worry. These emotions, although common, are useless in terms of action and problem solving. Instead of helping us, They keep us trapped in unproductive thought cycles that prevent us from enjoying the present. Guilt, an anchor in the past. Imagine a mistake you made years ago. You hurt someone, made a bad decision, or failed at a crucial moment. Even though the event is over and you can't change it, you keep reliving it in your mind, reproaching yourself and punishing yourself emotionally. This is the power of guilt. For reflection, guilt doesn't change the past, but it can limit your present. If you don't free yourself from it, it can become a barrier to growth and inner peace. How to overcome guilt? Learn from the mistake. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this experience? Mistakes are inevitable, but they are also a source of learning. Forgive yourself. Recognize that we all make mistakes. Forgiveness doesn't mean ignoring your actions, but accepting them as part of your humanity and deciding to move on. Take positive action. If possible, look for ways to make amends. This can be a sincere apology, an act of kindness, or simply a commitment to do better in the future. Practical example, letting go of guilt. A person who had lost contact with a friend after a conflict carried guilt for years. Finally, he decided to send a message of apology and express his feelings. Although the friend did not respond, this act allowed him to release his guilt and feel at peace with himself. Forgiveness, both towards others and towards yourself, is a powerful tool to free yourself from the weight of the past. Worry, fear of the future. Worry is an emotion that projects us into the future, imagining negative scenarios that, in many cases, never come to pass. Dyer compares worry to paying interest on a debt you may never owe. Worry doesn't solve problems, it only amplifies them. It robs you of mental and emotional energy that you could use to act in the present. How to overcome worry? Focus on the present. Remember that the future is not guaranteed. The only effective action you can take is in the now. Make a list of possible actions. Identify what you can do today to prepare for the future. Then let go of the rest. Accept uncertainty. Life is uncertain, and that's okay. Instead of resisting this reality, accept that you can't control everything. Let's take a practical example. Stop worrying about the future. A student worried about an important exam spent days imagining the worst possible outcomes. He decided to make a detailed study plan, breaking down his tasks into small steps. By focusing on the present and what he could do, he decreased his anxiety and felt more prepared. Action replaces worry. Every small step you take today reduces the fear of tomorrow. The connection between guilt and worry. Both emotions have something in common. They take you away from the present moment. Guilt anchors you to the past, while worry projects you into an uncertain future. Dyer invites us to recognize these emotions for what they are, distractions from the only thing that really matters, the now. What could you accomplish if you let go of guilt and worry? What positive changes could you make today? A practical exercise, freeing yourself from guilt and worry. Identify a guilt that haunts you. Ask yourself, what did I learn from this experience? What can I do now to move forward? Write down your current worries. Divide the list into 2 columns. Things I can control. Things I can't control. Act on what is in your control and let go of the rest. Practice mindfulness. Spend a few minutes a day focusing on the present moment. Observe your breathing, feel your surroundings, and be grateful for what you have here and now. Bottom line, live in the present. Wayne Dyer reminds us that both guilt and worry are useless emotions because they don't solve anything. Freeing yourself from them doesn't mean ignoring your responsibilities, but choosing to live in the only moment you really have, the present. The next time you find yourself caught in guilt or worry, stop and ask yourself, what can I do now to move forward? Then act from that answer. Chapter 16. Exploring the unknown. The trap of rigidity is an obstacle to personal growth. Wayne Dyer invites us to reflect on one of the greatest challenges we face, the fear of the unknown. This fear keeps us anchored to the familiar, even when we know it doesn't make us happy. However, true personal transformation happens when we have the courage to explore new paths and step out of our comfort zone. The comfort of the known. Most people prefer to stay in familiar situations, even if they are not ideal. This attachment to the known gives us a false sense of security, but at the same time it limits us. How many opportunities have you passed up because you were afraid of the unknown? Maybe you didn't change jobs, avoided moving to a new city, or turned down an experience for fear of what might happen. Fear as a barrier to growth. Fear of the unknown not only limits our actions, but also our ability to learn and evolve. Dyer explains that this fear often comes from a need for control and an aversion to uncertainty. An example: imagine someone who has been in the same job for years, yet doesn't feel fulfilled. The idea of looking for something new seems scary because they don't know what they will find. This fear keeps them in a routine that doesn't allow them to grow or reach their potential. Fear of the unknown is natural, but it shouldn't be an obstacle to moving forward. Every step outside your comfort zone is an opportunity to discover something new about yourself. The benefits of exploring the unknown. Personal growth. By facing new challenges, you develop skills and resilience. New opportunities. The unknown can open doors you never imagined. Expanding your perspective. Meeting new people, places, or ideas helps you see the world from a different angle. How to start exploring the unknown. Accept change as a part of life. Nothing stays the same forever. Embracing this truth will help you accept uncertainty more easily. Make small changes. You don't have to take a giant leap right away. Start with small steps that lead you toward something new. For example, take a course in a subject that interests you. Try a new hobby. Change your daily routine, such as taking a different route to work. Redefine failure. Viewing the unknown as a learning opportunity rather than a risk of failure will give you more confidence to try. Next, let's do an exercise. Step outside your comfort zone. Identify an area of your life where you feel stuck. It could be at work, in your relationships, or in your daily activities. Think of a small action you can take to explore something new. Ask yourself, what's the worst that could happen if I try? And what's the best I could gain? Do it. Take that first step and reflect on what you learned from the experience, regardless of the outcome. An example: embrace the unknown. A woman who had lived her entire life in the same city decided, after a long time, to accept a job in another country. Although she was initially afraid to leave everything familiar behind, she found that the experience not only broadened her perspective, but also allowed her to rediscover herself. The initial fear of change is normal, but the benefits of exploring the unknown often far outweigh the doubts. What opportunities might you be missing out on because of fear of the unknown? What small step could you take today to step out of your comfort zone? Bottom line, dare to explore. Wayne Dyer reminds us that personal growth and happiness are not found in the familiar, but in what we have not yet experienced. Every time you choose to step out of your comfort zone, you get closer to your true potential. The next time you face a decision that involves uncertainty, ask yourself, what can I learn from this? Then act boldly. Chapter 17. Rigidity versus spontaneity. Rigidity encloses, spontaneity liberates. Wayne Dyer addresses one of the most common tensions in our lives: our inclination toward rigidity versus the possibility of living more spontaneously. Rigidity, while giving us a sense of control, can limit our ability to fully enjoy life and discover new opportunities. The weight of rigidity. Rigidity manifests itself in our need to plan every detail and control outcomes. While this attitude may seem necessary to achieve goals, it often leads to frustration when things don't go as expected. A practical example: think about a day when you had everything planned: schedules, activities, and specific outcomes. If something didn't go according to your plan, how did you react? You probably experienced stress, anger, or frustration. And now, a reflection. The desire for total control is not only unrealistic, but it can also prevent us from enjoying the surprises and opportunities that arise along the way. The benefits of spontaneity. Dyer encourages us to adopt a more spontaneous attitude, allowing life to surprise us. Spontaneity frees us from the pressure of controlling everything and opens us up to new experiences that we might otherwise overlook. One day, you decide to change your route to work. Along the way, you discover a lovely cafe where you stop for a drink, and there you meet someone who transforms your day, or even your life. These kinds of experiences cannot be planned. They happen when we allow ourselves to flow with life. Spontaneity does not mean abandoning responsibility, but rather being willing to adapt and accept the unexpected as part of the process. Practical exercise. Introduce spontaneity into your life. Change your daily routine. Do something different this week. For example, take a different route to work. Try a new restaurant or recipe. Devote time to a hobby you've always wanted to explore. Say yes to something unexpected. The next time someone invites you to do something out of the ordinary, instead of automatically declining, accept the invitation. Challenge your own rules. Ask yourself, what if I did this differently? Often, our habits and self-imposed rules are more limiting than we realize. Rigidity as a barrier to growth. Dyer points out that rigidity can block our personal growth and our ability to enjoy life. By insisting on maintaining control, we close the door to unexpected experiences that could enrich our perspective. Here's a thought. How many opportunities could you be missing by insisting on always following the same path? Spontaneity as revitalization. When you introduce spontaneity into your life, you break away from monotony and allow yourself to experience the world from a new perspective. These small changes not only revitalize your day-to-day life, but they also help you develop greater emotional and mental flexibility. Here's an example. One person who always planned his vacations down to the last detail decided one year to simply pick a destination and explore without an itinerary. That experience, while initially uncomfortable, turned out to be one of the most memorable and enriching of his life. How to balance planning with spontaneity. Plan for the essentials, but leave room for the unexpected. Set general goals, but allow flexibility in how to achieve them. Be aware of your reactions to change. When something doesn't go as planned, instead of getting frustrated, ask yourself, what can I learn or enjoy from this situation? Adopt a curiosity mindset. Look at each day as an opportunity to discover something new, even in the most routine moments. Bottom line, let life surprise you. Wayne Dyer reminds us that life isn't about controlling everything, but about learning to flow with what it offers us. By allowing ourselves to be more spontaneous, we break away from rigidity and make room for experiences that can transform our perspective. The next time you're tempted to control every detail, stop and ask yourself, what if I just let this play out? Then watch life surprise you. Chapter 18. The Always Having a Plan Trap. Security isn't in plans, it's in your ability to adapt. Wayne Dyer warns us about a subtle but common trap: attachment to plans. Planning isn't bad. In fact, it can be a useful tool for organizing our lives. However, when we rely solely on our plans to feel secure, we risk becoming prisoners of our own expectations. The problem with sticking to plans. When we make plans, we imagine a future that we think we have under control. However, life, by nature, is unpredictable, and sticking to those plans can lead to frustration, anxiety, and disappointment. Here's an example. Think about a day when you had everything perfectly organized: meetings, activities, and specific outcomes. What happened when something unexpected changed the course of your plan? You probably felt stressed or angry because things didn't go as they should. As a reflection, we could have the following. Plans can guide you, but they shouldn't define you. The ability to adapt to the unexpected is what really allows you to move forward with resilience and confidence. The freedom to flow with the unexpected. Dyer emphasizes that life is not about foreseeing every detail, but about learning to flow with surprises and challenges. Not only does this reduce stress, but it also allows you to discover opportunities that you wouldn't have considered if you were too focused on following a rigid plan. Key lesson. It's not about giving up on planning, but about leaving room for improvisation and adaptability. Strategies for embracing the unknown. Practice curiosity. Trade frustration into curiosity when something doesn't go your way. Ask yourself, what can I learn from this situation? Embrace mistakes as opportunities. Instead of seeing mistakes as failures, see them as valuable lessons that teach you something new about yourself or the world. Leave room for the unexpected. When planning, make time for flexibility. For example, if you're planning a day full of activities, leave room to explore something spontaneous that might come up. Cultivate a whatever comes mindset. Embrace the idea that no matter what happens, you have the internal tools to handle it. This mindset gives you a sense of security without needing to control every detail. An inspiring example. Dyer shares the story of someone who, instead of planning every detail of their vacation, decided to travel without a rigid itinerary. By allowing herself to explore and adapt, she found unique places, met interesting people, and lived experiences she would never have considered if she had stuck to a strict plan. Flexibility not only reduces stress, but it also opens the door to unexpected and enriching experiences. Practical exercise. Practice flexibility in your day-to-day. Make a list of your most frequent plans. This can be your daily routine, your weekly goals, or even your expectations in relationships or projects. Identify where you can leave room for the unexpected. Ask yourself, what if something didn't go as planned? How could I adapt? Try a day without strict planning. Choose a day where, instead of following a rigid to-do list, you allow circumstances to guide your actions. The value of adaptability. Learning to flow with the unknown not only relieves stress, but also builds your emotional and mental resilience. By accepting that life is uncertain, you can turn every challenge into an opportunity to grow and learn. Here's a thought. When was the last time something didn't go the way you planned? How might your experience have changed if you had adopted a more flexible attitude? Conclusion. Live beyond plans. Wayne Dyer reminds us that plans are useful tools, but they shouldn't be a prison. True security comes from our ability to adapt, not from the rigidity of our expectations. The next time a plan doesn't go the way you expected, stop and ask yourself, what new opportunity could come from this? Then, act with curiosity and openness. Chapter 19. Breaking the barrier of convention. You decide your own rules of conduct, not others. In this chapter, Wayne Dyer challenges us to question the social norms we follow without thinking. We live in a world full of shoulds and expectations that often do not reflect our real desires. These invisible rules shape our decisions, limit our freedom, and keep us from our true potential. The should trap. From a young age, we are taught to follow a series of shoulds that dictate how we should live. You should get married before you're 30. You should work a stable job to be successful. You should have children to be happy. These shoulds are not inherently bad, but when we accept them without question, they can become chains that bind us to a life that does not resonate with our true essence. Let me give you an example. Think about an important decision you have made in your life. Was it really yours, or was it influenced by what others expected of you? Maybe you chose a career because you should make good money, but you always dreamed of doing something different. How to identify the shoulds in your life. Dyer encourages us to stop and reflect. Make a list of your shoulds. Write down all the expectations you feel are guiding your decisions. Ask yourself if they resonate with you. Reflect on each of those shoulds and ask yourself, is this something I really want, or am I just following what others expect of me? Redefine your own rules. Replace those shoulds with statements that reflect your authentic desires. For example, instead of "you should be successful in a corporate job," say, "I can define success on my own terms." The foolishness of conventions. Wayne Dyer points out that following societal norms without question makes us prisoners of a life we have not chosen. When you decide to break away from conventions and create your own rules, you begin to live a more authentic and fulfilling life. Here's a thought. It's not about rejecting everything society proposes, but about adopting only that which aligns with your values and desires. Now an example. A man who spent years working in an office to be successful decided to leave his stable job and dedicate himself to his passion for carpentry. Although many criticized him, he found a happiness and satisfaction he had never experienced before. How to free yourself from should. Question social expectations. The next time you feel pressure to comply with it should, stop and ask yourself, is this really important to me? Embrace your own rules. Create a set of principles that reflect who you are and what you truly value. Accept criticism with confidence. When breaking away from conventions, you are likely to face criticism. Remember that these opinions do not define your worth or your decisions. Let's do a practical exercise now. Define your own rules. Write down a list of your priorities. Take an inventory of what really matters to you, regardless of what others think. Set a principle that you want to follow. For example, if you value creativity, you might decide, I will spend time each week exploring creative activities, regardless of what others consider productive. Do something today that reflects your authentic values. It can be as simple as saying no to something that doesn't resonate with you or taking the first step toward a dream you've always put off. The power of being authentic. When you choose to live by your own rules, you free yourself from the weight of external expectations. This act of authenticity not only gives you greater personal satisfaction, but it also inspires others to do the same. What is a shoulds that you have long followed that you could leave behind today? Conclusion. Live by your own rules. Wayne Dyer reminds us that we have the power to decide how we want to live our lives. Shoulds and conventions only have power over us if we let them. Do something today that reflects your true self, something you would never have done for fear of breaking the expectations of others. Remember that authenticity is the first step towards a full and meaningful life. What small step can you take today to live by your own rules? Share your experiences in the comments and subscribe for more life-changing content. Remember, the life you want begins when you stop living by the shoulds of others. In the next chapter, we'll explore how to cultivate a mindset of acceptance and detachment, letting go of unnecessary judgments and expectations. Join me on this journey toward a more authentic and free life.